Minister, you've mentioned in the past that your public consultation on hate speech laws had several strands and workshops, some of which were positive, but you failed to mention that virtually all of these involved self-described activists and government-funded NGOs that have publicly campaigned for hate speech laws for years. So in what way is this credible? Are you not just effectively trying to launder false support for an unpopular policy?
What I've said before is that we had a number of different strands of a public consultation. There were 4 elements to it, one of which was self-selecting, so to speak, and the other 3 areas invited representatives from NGOs, from academics, An Garda Síochána, a broad spectrum of individuals, not just those who perhaps have advocated for legislation, but many other people. And the result of that, I suppose, is the legislation that we have here and now. As well as that, we passed the incitement to hatred or violence legislation through the Dáil with, I would say, 95% of support. That's all members in government benches, the vast majority of those in opposition. And that was, again, taking on board recommendations from the Joint Oireachtas Committee, where they would have themselves had an open consultation and engaged across a broad spectrum of individuals. So there's a huge amount of work has been done, and I have taken into consideration and actually made changes based on recommendations from representatives from right across the political spectrum, but right across general spectrums.
But, I mean, of course, politicians are going to be of one view, but the whole controversy around this bill is that there seems to be a disconnect between the politicians and the general public that, to my knowledge, your department hasn't provided any evidence that there's some public outcry for this, that there's a widespread belief across society and the general public that we need these laws. It seems to be coming from politicians like yourself, NGOs that are paid by departments like your department, and what I'm trying to get at is that a credible reflection of how the public feels?
What I would say is that there are many ways in which legislation is developed and evolves and is then subsequently enacted. We do not have hate crime legislation in this country. We're one of the few countries in the Western world that does not have hate crime legislation. And we know from figures from the Gardaí, while it's not in statute, they are now starting to collect data that hate crime is on the increase of almost 30% in recent years. So I firmly believe, as do those who have engaged in this legislation, that it is necessary to send a very strong signal that those who target physically or verbally assault and obviously go to the extremes of incite hatred against other people, that there is a consequence at the end of the day, and this is something that we take very seriously. We're talking about protecting those who are most vulnerable in our society. So there are many ways in which legislation can transpire, and we have gone through quite a lengthy process to get to where we are today. In fact, over 4 years of engagement on this issue. So to suggest it's been rushed or that it's solely been driven by myself or any one individual is simply not the case.
Minister, can I ask, was there any evidence that the legal aid system was